morning, good afternoon, not get technical. All right, so first of all, I just want to show you, this is a new book that just came out. It's called My Wife, My Queen, which is a Shalom Bayis book for men. All right, so if anybody's interested, I have a few copies here, to 20 shekels each. If you're not interested, then for sure you should get the book. So I only ask mechila before you start reading, because after you start reading, you're going to hate me. So okay. So I want to speak about a subject. I chose a subject, and I realized it happens to be this week's parsha also. I want to speak of something I think a lot of people don't know a lot about, which is the whole inyan of the life of Kohanim. Anybody here Kohanim? Any Kohanim here? We're Kohanim. My family is Kohanim. Any Kohanim? Any Leviim? You're the only one who could wash our hands even. Right? No one else can even wash our hands? Wow. Okay. Feels special. A Bechor. That's only if there's no Levi around. And so I want to speak about, it's a very interesting world which a lot of people are not aware of. What Kohanim, what some of the halachas are, and what a Kohen goes through. So the Torah says, in the beginning it says, Emor ve'amarta, so Rashi says, Lahazir gedolim alaktanim. So the Mepharshim explained that Lahazir gedolim alaktanim means that the adult Kohanim have to supervise the minor Kohanim to make sure they don't become Tameh. So the Mepharshim ask, why is it that you don't find that by Shatnez? It doesn't say La'azer Agdolim Alaktanim. You don't find it by Achilas Chazer. You don't find La'azer Agdolim Alaktanim. And the only time in the Torah where the Torah takes pains to tell us that you have to have the adults have to supervise the children is by Kahuna. Right? So it seems to be something strange about it. So the Mepharshim explain that the idea is that there's something unique about the Isser of Tumas Kohanim. First of all, people ask all the time, nowadays we're all Tamei Meis. So what's the problem of a Kohen becoming Tamei with a dead body? We're all Tamei Meis anyway. Right? People have asked me that all the time. The answer to that, first of all, is if somebody ate pork, nobody would think, well, since I ate pork, I'm already porculated, and therefore I can continue eating pork, right? We understand whatever pork does to you, you can't continue eating pork. A person, a Kohen, who becomes Tameh, becoming Tameh is only a consequence. The Isser is to come in contact with the Tumah. So the Kohen comes in contact, every time he comes in contact with the Tumah, so that he's over on an Isser. So the Isser is that, once you're Tameh, always Tameh, now the game's over. It doesn't work that way. The Isser is to come in contact with the various forms of Tumah. So what the first to explain is that a Kohen, normally Jewish children associate with other Jewish children. A Kohen's children are associated with other Jewish children. Now if the other Jewish children, none of the Jewish children wear shatnez and none of them chazer. But what if they decide to play hide and seek in a cemetery, right? So now their friend the Kohen might want to go in with them. So the parents have to be extra vigilant on their children who are Kohanim, because the people you're associated with are not going to be as careful as you are. And I want to tell you that this is halacha l'maisa, because when my kids were in Cheder, so every time, in America on Lag BaOmer, anytime they have the Lag BaOmer outing, where do they go in America, Lag BaOmer outings? They go to a ball game, they go to an amusement park, they go to swimming pool. In Israel, you go to Kvarim, right? Whenever you have a vacation, you go to a kever. That's what I heard about. A family was here for a summer vacation. So they went to the kever, the Rambam, Samachpela, kever Rachel. Finally, at the end of summer, a 7-year-old girl said to her mother, "Mommy, isn't anyone in this country alive?" Right? So that's what you do in Israel. No matter what they do, we're going to have a barbecue and a kever. So I always had to call the Rebbe in advance to tell the Rebbe that my son, reminded that whichever son was in Cheder at the time, reminded my son can't go in because you have to watch wherever the class is going. That's Lahazir Gdolim Alaktanim. So a Kohen has to know. They have in other areas where we are not allowed to let a katan become tamei. If he's born in a hospital, which we'll talk about in a second. So he's born in a hospital. They have. I've heard there's a concept of underwater births or something like that. We don't do that, right? We stick with the old-fashioned way. But in the whatever the hospital situation is, then the parents have to supervise. So the Torah says that there's an azar of tumas meis. What's the idea that Kohanim are not allowed to contact with a dead body? This brings up all sorts of interesting situations. The first is, the Farshim explained, if you look at other religions, what is a Kohen? The Kohen's what we call the priest, that's what they translate it. The Kohanim are the spiritual leaders of the people. So I think Rav Shimshon Hirsch says that in other religions, where does the priest ever have any sort of involvement with the family? When is the priest involved? Usually when somebody's on their deathbed, and the priest comes in and he invokes what they call last rites or whatever they do. The Torah wants us to know that the job of the Kohen is to be involved when a person's alive, not when he's going to die. The Kohen's involvement is for life instruction, not death. When a person dies, they're on their own. When a person is alive, that's when they're supposed to use the Kohen, get instruction, get hadracha, get musar, whatever it is that they're supposed to do. Not that the Kohen is there to help him out. Now, a Kohen hedyot is allowed to come into contact with his immediate family. The Kohen Gadol has restrictions even on his next of kin. The Kohen Gadol is not even allowed to come in contact with his mother, father, son, daughter, wife, brother, sister, because the Kohen Gadol, there's a concern that the family members will feel that our father, son, brother, whoever it is the Kohen Gadol, therefore we have some sort of protectia up there, right? And that's how it works in this country. You have protectia. So the Torah says, you're on your own. The family, even the Kohen Gadol, even the family does not have the connection to the Kohen Gadol after death. You're on your own, and therefore the Torah first says the idea is it's a reminder that a person has to use the Kohen when he's alive. The Kohen is there for instruction, not the whole person when he dies. Now, the first problem obviously that you run into for Kohanim, the first restriction is tumas meis. Now, tumas meis begins first of all with cemeteries. So many of the cemeteries in Israel, they may have an access path. But there are other places, for example, where my father, Zichrono Livracha, is buried on Har Zeisim. So, we didn't go to the Levaya because the Minhag Yerushalayim, the sons like, we've never been able to go to the kever. We do not have access. We checked it out with other people. We do not have access on Har Zeisim. Har Menuchos, there are access paths, but you have to make sure, number one, that you're not within Dalet Amos of a kever, unless there's a barrier, a wall of some sort. Number two is the problem of the overhang. Now, those of you who have ever been on Bar Ilan Street, in Yerushalayim, as you walk past the Sanhedria cemetery, on the sign, there's a sign on the side of the wall. On the sign, see, sometimes the Yisrael doesn't even notice it. You don't even notice. You see the word Kohanim, and it's got nothing to do with me. Kohanim are very sensitive to this sort of thing. There's a sign on the wall that says Kohanim should not walk across on the side near the wall because there's an overhang of the trees coming out of the cemetery. And the halacha is, if this, let's say this microphone is the grave, if this is the grave goes up, this becomes a roof over a block over the tumah, and anything under the branches, so something over here, then becomes tameh. So an overhang then creates a situation of tumah. Those of you who are from England, anybody here from England? Or you should be from America, but okay. If you're from England, and in London, there's something called Hoop Lane. Hoop Lane, and they always told us whenever I'm in England, they say don't drive if you go to avoid Hoop Lane because there's a cemetery and there's an overhang of trees. So the first thing that happens is where he said, now I know that in Sfas, I had a Kohen who once told me they went on a class trip, of course. There you should when I got, so where do you go? You go to the old cemetery in Sfas, yeah. And the Kohanim had to stay outside the cemetery, so they sat down on a bench and everybody went in. The cemetery was very poorly marked in those days. I think things that probably haven't been there, but they probably upgraded. So he told me they sat down on a bench, everybody went into the cemetery, but then it turned out they weren't sitting on a bench, they were sitting on a tombstone, right? which is bad. So it even says in the Gemara, the Gemara says by Ben Sora Amor, the Gemara says, that one of the Amoraim says that I saw Ben Sora Amor Yeshavti al Kivro, that I sat on the grave of a Ben Sora. And Rabbi Akiva Eiger asks over there, how can you sit on a grave? How can you sit on a tombstone? It's also to sit on a tombstone. So there are different answers that the Gemara gives. So the cemeteries, number one, are always a problem. And in general, Kohanim don't go to Levayas, and certainly even if Kohen could go to Levaya, you have to make sure you dial it almost behind the mace. But we don't go into cemeteries. You just don't go in because it's too, unless you know for a fact where you're going, you don't go in. Number one. Number two are hospitals. Hospitals are a real. Ironically, in America, hospitals are easier to go into than in Israel because tumas mace of a goy, ohel by a goy and tumas mace, that we're allowed to be mekil on. Whereas by a Jew, tumas ohel, we can't be. So in America, you can rely on a rove in the hospital, that the rove in the hospital is goyim, you can go in. In Israel, in the hospitals, they have a sign, which again, I don't know if maybe you ever noticed it, nobody should ever go into the hospital, unless you're going in to get money from somebody, but nobody should ever have to go into the hospital, but there's a sign on the hospitals that says, Azhara Kohanim. If you've ever seen this, the first hospital that was most responsible was Shari Tzedek Hospital, very conscientious about it, and they put up a sign that says, Azhara Kohanim, and if the sign is up, you can't go in. It takes them about an hour and a half or 2 hours to remove, if somebody was nifter, to remove the mace from the hospital. Now, I once went, we had a baby, my wife had the baby, we were going to visit, and I was with 2 sons and a daughter. The sons were, and when we got to the hospital, the sign of Azhara Kohanim was up. So my sons and I had to wait outside, which I wasn't that unhappy about because then they got a hands-on lesson of what it is to be a Kohen. You got to be inconvenienced for the mitzvah. The daughter was able to go in because the limitations do not apply to women who are Kohanim. Women who are Kohanim, a Bas Kohen is where my wife happens to be a Bas Kohen. Right? You're supposed to be impressed, by the way. My wife happens to be a Bas Kohen. My mother is a Bas Kohen. Mother's a Bas Kohen. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Finally, it's good to know somebody's here. Yeah. My older brother's wife is a Bas Kohen. Right, and my younger brother's wife is not a Bas Kohen, and we haven't spoken to them in 20 years. So what's remarkable is, number one, the status of a woman, which we're going to talk about later, makes no difference if she's a Bas Kohen or not, because her status is fully after the husband. So if she's a Bas Kohen married to a Yisrael, she can't eat truma. If she's a Bas Yisrael married to a Kohen, she could eat truma. So her status of whatever her father was is really insignificant. But they do not have a limitation on, the women do not have a limitation on tumas mace. And the Mefarshim explained that the reason the Kohen women don't have a limitation is because they brought death to the world, right? Chava brought death to the world. And since they brought, that's why they light the candles on Erev Shabbos, it's rekindling Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam. They extinguish the original candle, and therefore they relight the candle. And therefore, women do not have the limitation of tumas mace. So they're able to be involved with the Chevra Kadisha, with the burial, because they are. It's a way of being mechaper for their avera. Now, one of the issues you get at my wife was once having. Years ago. Now the Hadassah hospitals also have the sign of Azhara Kohanim. Years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, they did not have the Azhara Kohanim. My wife had a minor surgery, and she was in Hadassah Har Tzofim. So we were I think it was our first or second year of marriage. And so she had a minor surgery, and I had to go. She was in the hospital for 8 days. That was minor surgery. And so I got to the entrance one day, and I was standing at the entrance. There's no sign, so I was looking for somebody who could go into the hospital and determine what's going on, to go ask around if I'm allowed to go in or not. So I was loitering by the entrance. There's a shomer who's sitting inside the hospital, and at a certain point, the shomer saw me loitering. I was waiting for somebody to come past, and at a certain point, he said to me, "Adoni, maze." So I said to him, "Mato sepa maze." So I said to him, I figured the truth is always. I said, "Slicha, ani kohen, ani lo yodei ani chol ikanes." So I declined his psak to rely on his psak, and I was not able to go in for 8 days. I wasn't able to go into the hospital because I didn't have any sort of reliable means, anything to go on. That was it. Now it's apparently become much better. Number one. Number two, there's the issue of a Kohen becoming a doctor. Now this is a serious. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein writes, Rabbi Moshe in the Tshuva from this is before 1985, when Rabbi Moshe was nifter, Rabbi Moshe, a Kohen cannot become a doctor because doctors had to work on cadavers. And a Kohen is not allowed to work with cadavers. I had a guy once at Ohr Somayach who was already Shomer Shabbos, and he said to me, this is also way back, I think my second year at Ohr Somayach, he came to me, he said to me, Rabbi, I'm a Kohen, and I want to go to medical school. What do I do? So I said to him, I mean, you're going to have to speak to a posek, because as far as I know, Rabbi Moshe says that you can't, a Kohen can't become a doctor. He says to me, Rabbi, I'm going to become a doctor. Now, what should I do? So I sent him to a posek who happened to be a Kohen. And I sent him to a major posek, and he told him, look, at a minimum, don't make physical contact with the body, minimize physical contact. Can't give him a dispensation, can't give him a heter, but at a minimum, minimize it. Then years later, I was asked by another guy who told me he plans on going to medical school, and he told me that his future father-in-law consulted with Rabbi Dovid Feinstein, and Rabbi Dovid Feinstein said that nowadays the matzav has changed. See, there's an area where you have to constantly be up on what's happening practically, because things are changing all the time. Rabbi Dovid Feinstein said that, number one, in medical schools, they no longer require doctors to work on cadavers in medical schools, number one. And number two, in America, there is actually a shortage of cadavers. I guess the crime rate in New York is down, so there's a shortage of cadavers in America. So a Kohen doesn't have to. So for a Kohen nowadays, again, after consulting obviously with a posek, then a Kohen would have to be. Then a Kohen theoretically, would be allowed to go into to become a doctor. There's an interesting shaila, because it says in the piyut that we read on, that we say on Yom Kippur and on Tisha B'Av, the Asar Rogei Malchus. So the first two that were taken out to be killed were Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol. So it says that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, they executed him, they cut his head off, and after his head was cut off, Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol picked up his head, and he said this, the mouth that spoke in Torah, and so on and so forth. So big kasha. How could he's a Kohen Gadol, how could he pick up the head? How is he allowed to pick up? A good question, right? They say that piyut every year. How is Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol allowed to pick up the head of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel? What do you say? One answer is a meis mitzvah. Very good. A meis mitzvah means there's a body lying there. They're going to kill Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol. That'll be later. Right now, it's a meis mitzvah. You have to be osek b'mitzvah. What'll be after you pick up the head? That's their business. But right now, it's a meis mitzvah, so you have to do whatever you can. He's a Kohen Gadol's allowed. There's actually a Mishnah in Nazir that asks what happens if a Kohen Gadol and a Nazir are walking together and they see a meis mitzvah. Who should be matame to it? The Kohen Gadol and Nazir. I don't know. I guess Kohen Gadol's and Nazirs used to walk around together. I guess So if a Kohen Gadol and Nazir see a meis mitzvah, one of them should be matame. Who should be matame to it? So one answer is that Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol number one is a meis mitzvah. Number two, there are poskim that say kivrei tzadikim are not metame. So there are in the Hasidic world, there are Hasidim that are willing to go into into Maras HaMachpelah or Kever Rachel, whatever it is. In the Litvish world, even though there is a mahalach like that, the Litvish world, we do not rely on that psak. So there are those that say that it's begetter kivrei tzadikim ain't a metame. A body of a tzadik is not metame. Number three is that there's Chaye Shah. That means like this, a brilliant answer. Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol was going to be executed. He knew that he was being taken out to be executed. But he knew that as long as he picks up this head and he starts putting on a performance, as long as he's talking to the head, the Romans aren't killing him yet. So that's docha for Chaye Shah, for Pikuach Nefesh. You're allowed to pick up that for Chaye Shah. So he picks up that. He's allowed to be docha Chaye Shah. That's the answer that's given. There are other answers that are given. That's the answer that's given. Now, one of the other areas, which is a very big tircha, is flying. Okay, now for Kohanim, flying is a remarkably difficult, much more difficult than you can imagine what we've got to go through. So years ago, to fly to Eretz Yisrael, people are bringing mason. People often bring mason to bury them in Eretz Yisrael. To leave Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz, you don't have to check because of mason on the plane. Nobody's taking a mace to bury him in Kansas City. It's not like Kansas City, well, Pittsburgh. These aren't places where anybody's looking at. But to come to Eretz Yisrael, it's a problem. So first of all, you say, I don't know if those of you remember Tower Airlines? Remember Tower Airlines, what I used to call the flying Stiebel, right? Because there was a minion every 15 minutes, on Tower Airlines. So on Tower Airlines was a body-free airline. They never brought bodies. But the other airline, El Al, has a monopoly on it, and it's a big bucks. And El Al, I called Rabbi Dovid Feinstein years ago, and he told me that El Al, out of any major American city, Los Angeles, New York, Toronto, suburb of America, any major American city, there's better than 50% of the flights are carrying a mace, and therefore a Kohen cannot get on the plane without checking with cargo to make sure that there will not be a mace on the plane. And when I would fly, I would actually have to call to find out, are there any mason on the plane? So the problem is, obviously, that you call, they may not know until very close to the last minute, and then you got to start making alternative plans. That happened to me a couple of times, and after that, I started finding an alternative situation. One of them was I was flying to. I once went to London, and I routed myself back through. I didn't want to fly British at the time from London. I didn't want to fly El Al from London. So what I did was I flew to London. I was there for about a week, and I routed myself to go from London to Frankfurt and pick up El Al coming out of Frankfurt, where there's a smaller community. You don't have to check for. It's not even close to 50%. So my itinerary was to go through England and then to Frankfurt. So I get to customs in England, and there was a Hindu. Must have been about 6 feet 4 inches tall, a huge Hindu, long black beard, and a tichel. And I get to customs, and as soon as I walk up to the customs desk, he comes over. He didn't like me from the get-go. I don't know why. I didn't. I'm not. I could tell right. I was very, very. So as soon as I get there, I put down my passport. I had a landing card. So the landing card says occupation, which always stumps me. I'm always stumped, even when it says name. You want my real name? You want somebody else's name? It doesn't say whose name. Right? Okay, so I put down my name, and it says occupation, which I tried to figure out what that was. So I can't just say none, right? So I wrote down teacher. So the guy looks at it very, very aggressive. He picks up my landing card and goes, "What do you teach?" I don't like his attitude. So he's 6'4", I'm not, and I just kind of looked up and I said, "Torah." So he kind of flinched for a second. Then he looks at my itinerary and says, "Why are you flying through Germany?" So I said to him, "Well, there's a problem with tumas mace. Some poskim are makel if there's a posach tefach in the thing. Some are I'm machmir." So he looked at me and I looked at. We looked deep into each other's souls. It's possibly the best 5 seconds of my life. He was looking at me like this. I'm just looking at him like this. And he said to me again, "What do you teach?" I said, "Torah." Right? So he stamps it and he says, "Okay, you can go in." Now, the problem becomes you have to check with the airlines. So I was once flying out of London. Now I don't have to check, because now between British Air and El Al, 1 out of 20 flights, statistically 1 out of 20 flights has a mace on it. That's way under the percentage. I'm not mechuyev to check. Ikradin, anything under 49%, under 50%, I'm not mechuyev to check. Different poskim say that if it's mamiut, a matsui, it should be less, whatever. 1 out of 20 for sure not. At the time I was checking, and I started calling cargo early in the day, because I wanted to know. The sooner I know, the sooner I can make alternatives. So I call up cargo. I say, "Excuse me, are there going to be any bodies on tonight's flight?" "No, sir, that we know about. Not as of yet, no." As I call up about an hour later, "As of yet, no." So then I called up a third time. I guess the guy had about enough of me. He goes, "Yes, there will be 200 bodies, all of them alive." So, trials and tribulations of a Kohen. So that was what do you call it? Now, nowadays they have a special flight for Kohen. Even when a couple months ago, I was coming from LA, coming back to Israel again. I routed myself through Frankfurt. There, I don't have to worry. Nowadays, there is El Al flight 028 from Newark to Israel is a guaranteed no-body flight. That's the Kohanim flight. So wherever I am in the United States coming back, I always route myself through Newark on the way back to Israel. Recently, I called up, there's a guy who, Yochanan Lombard, he was just quoted in the newspaper, in the Hamodia, because they have this what do you call it, this idea, this plan to make cable cars to go to the Kaisel. I don't know if you've heard about it or if you want to hear about it. Now they're planning cable cars. You can imagine how that's going to work. Cable cars to the Kaisel, And the problem is that he's not a Kohen. He's even written a book on Kohen. He got very involved in resolving problems for Kohanim in Tveria and in Tzfas and in Kever and what do you call it, in Meron and all over the place. And he was quoted as saying there's a problem because the cable car goes over a cemetery, a Karoim cemetery. And even the cable car goes over it, so it would knock off access for Kohanim to the Kaisel, and Kohanim would not be able to go on the cable car. That's one of the things that, okay, so the flight from Newark, now I spoke to him recently, and the airlines seem to be, there are many more alternatives for the Kohanim. One of the problems that you're aware of, and I'm not sure if you were to what degree, was back then, if you remember, there was a Kohen, there was a shir being given. There was a Baal Tshuva at the shir who was a pilot for El Al. The Rav in the shir was talking about, Chazal talk about a box that's suspended over a cemetery, that the box absorbs the tumah from the cemetery. And the Rav in the shir, he said, an example nowadays would be an airplane flying over a cemetery. So this guy who was a pilot for El Al, was a Baal Tshuva, he says, well, when we take off from, and he was talking about it being a problem for a Kohen, he said when we take off an airplane, the airplane's leaving the airport, they hit the cemetery at 800 meters, they are over the cemetery in Cholon. And that means the entire plane is Tameh, according to all poskim. That became a disaster for Kohanim, because I think it was right around Pesach time. El Al, or the United States rather, all flights went over the cemetery in Cholon except for the 747s at night. Apparently the noise level, the 747s at night, they didn't fly. Those were okay for Kohanim. The flights to Europe, there were no flights available that did not go over the cemetery in Cholon. There were guys, Kohanim, from Mir and from the other yeshivas who were taking boats to Cyprus. And from Cyprus, flying on those, one of those pedal at your seat airplanes, in order to get to Europe. Whereas for the Kohen, so now I had to get out of the country. We had an Ohr Somayach event in the United States, and so I booked on an El Al flight at night 747, which theoretically should be no problem. The only problem is that at the last minute, if there's a problem with the plane, they'll switch the plane. And if they switch the plane and it's a smaller plane, then I got problems. So what happened was, somebody came up with a brilliant idea, right? And some of you have seen this, some of you have seen pictures of it. Somebody came up with a brilliant idea. The halacha is that if you're inside, if the plane is over a cemetery, the plane becomes tameh. But anything inside a sealed kli does not become tameh. With a brilliant idea, he got on the plane and put himself inside a sealed kli, right? What kli could you seal yourself into? Only a suit isn't good enough. It's not. It was a body, what we call a body bag. So there's a Kohen who actually got on a plane and put himself in a body bag. Okay, it's not that long because it's only 800 meters. You hit the cemetery, you got to tie yourself in, and it takes 30 seconds for the plane to fly over the cemetery. The whole thing's over. Okay, so a guy gets on with a body bag. All right. In the meantime, I had gone to Rabbi Rabbi was a member of the Knesset, lived in my parents' building. So I went up to Rabbi to speak to him about, why can't they get some of the planes rerouted? Rabbi showed me a fax. He had contacted the Ministry of Aviation. And the Ministry of Aviation said, it's not our issue, it's the military. So he contacted the military. And of course, this is Israel. So they said that it's not our issue, it's the Ministry of Aviation. So they got ping-pong, he got ping-pong back and forth. Okay? In the meantime, the airlines said that they had rerouted themselves. Whereas there were activists who actually stood in the cemetery looking overhead. They said the planes were not rerouted. So the problem was not resolved. Okay. So I had to travel, and I was a little, I'm a good citizen, so I sent a fax to the CEO of El Al asking for administrative permission to put myself into a bag on takeoff in case they switch the plane. So I get a fax back, Mr. Kaplan, you may not do anything on takeoff other than be firmly seated, seat-belted securely in your seat. Okay, so I decided, look, I can't take a chance. It's unlikely. I'll take a body bag anyway. And just in case, by the time I finish it, by the time I do it, it'll be finished. Right? We're going back about 20 years. So I was all set to do it, but then Mrs. Kaplan got involved. Now, Mrs. Kaplan, this is shortly after 9/11. And Mrs. Kaplan said to me, look, I don't know what Avera you're worried about, but whatever Avera you're worried about, the panic you could cause on an airplane, doing something strange on takeoff, to say nothing of the fact that you get yourself shot, is a much bigger problem. You will not take a body bag, right? So I did not take the body bag with me in the end, and then they didn't switch the plane. And what happened was, eventually they rerouted enough planes at Rav Elyashiv Paskin that you could rely on it, and it wasn't a problem for Kohanim. Eventually they rerouted, but at the time it was a much bigger problem than anybody realized. Then there was a bigger problem, and the bigger problem was, those of you who have been around the country, remember Terminal 1 at the airport? Right? Terminal 1 is how we used to fly out of the airport, right? You get to Terminal 1, how did we get out to the plane? You get on a bus and they drive you out to the plane. Remember that? And every time we asked, why do they do that, what was always the answer? Security, right? Anything that doesn't work in the country is security. The traffic jam, security. Stores closed, security, right? It's always security. All of a sudden they built Terminal 3 and then there's no security problem anymore. Now they have sleeves, right? Now, so somebody realized, 1 second, if a plane lands with a body, and they hook up the sleeve to the plane, you just knocked out the entire airport for Kohanim. That was a serious problem. So Rav Elyashiv said that what has to happen is the Chevra Kadisha has to have the remote control for the sleeve, and they have to remove the body from the plane, and only after they remove the body from the plane, then to hook up the sleeve to the plane. The first plane landing at the new Terminal 3 airport was a El Al flight from New York, which had a body on it, and the activists were there, and the Chevra Kadisha ran it, and everything worked properly. Rav Elyashiv said that's not a problem. Then somebody came up, said to Rav Elyashiv, apparently somebody who had nothing to do, and said to Rav Elyashiv that there are 40 cemeteries in the New York area. 40 Jewish cemeteries in the New York area, and the likelihood of a plane flying into New York, chances are it may very well be flying over a cemetery. So that's a problem. Rabbi Elyashiv said, don't go looking for problems. Right? Don't go. We're not mechuyev to go finding the problems. That was one of the issues. Now, there are one of the practical things that people have to be aware of. First of all, there's a halacha l'maisa in Shulchan Aruch in Kuf Chav Ches. So the Mishnah, the Shulchan Aruch says, "Asur li shtamish bekohen b'zman hazeh." You're not allowed to make use of a kohen nowadays. Now we're never supposed to say that we like one halacha more than another. But I will admit a sneaking admiration for this one. So there's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch that says you're not allowed to make use asur li shtamish bekohen b'zman hazeh. Now this is a very, very big discussion among the poskim. What does that mean? Theoretically, it's based on the Kiddashto, which the Meforshim say is not, the poskim say the Kiddashto is not a Nesmachta, the Kiddashto is a Deoraisa, and the Kiddashto means that a Kohen has a certain level of precedence, Kedusha, whatever you want to call it. Now, first of all, I was once standing, when we first moved into my neighborhood, it was Erev Sukkot, so we're standing in line by the posek, and I stand in line to show the Lulavim and Esrogim. So we're standing in line, the line is moving very slowly. And there were two Avrechim standing in front of me, two former friends of mine were standing in front of me. And while they were standing there in line, I said to them, guys, while you're waiting to show whether or not your lulavim are mehuder, maybe you want to fulfill a mitzvah asay deoraisa of the kiddashto and let me go ahead of you in line. And they didn't like that. That's why they're former friends. So they declined my very generous offer, and then they asked the Rav Eber, the Rav in Neve Yaakov. I asked him, is that part of the Kiddush? He said to me, absolutely not. Because to give up your time is like giving up your money, and you're not mechuyev to give a kohen your money. That's not part of the Kiddashto. Litzari harav. That is not part of the Kiddashto that you have to give up your money to the Kohen. Giving up. So if, for example, if you and a Kohen hit the door at the same time, so then it's insignificant. So you stand that way, let the Kohen go first. That's the Kiddashto. You have the Kiddashto includes, he gets the first aliyah, and he leads the benching, and in one of the more, also not necessarily carried out halachas, if you're sitting at a table with the Kohen, there's a platter of food, you're supposed to let the Kohen take the first portion. Right? Well, As the old saying goes, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I get aliyahs and I get to lead the benching. When it comes to the food, it's every man for himself. But that is a halacha that you're supposed to let the Kohen take. That's the example that's brought down in halacha. Now, to ask a Kohen to do something becomes a problem. Because, for example, if somebody asks a Kohen to take I've asked all the time to go, could I take a letter to Ohr Somayach? Could you do something? Where's that line? Could you ask a Kohen to pass the salt? So if you're sitting at the table, you ask the Kohen to pass the salt. So the most poskim say, and the Mishnah Berurah says, Tov lahachmer lechatchila. Now if we do, it's based on a kula. But lechatchila, once you're machmer, not to ask of a Kohen. If the Kohen is willing to do it for you, you're not over. If a Kohen does it for you, but he does it with resentment, it's unpleasant for me to say no, but he's willing to do it for you, and he does it for you, but he really doesn't want to be doing it, he could be over on an Isser D'Oraisa. Not so much so that even as far as they ask, what about Ketanim? What about a Kohen who's a minor? So I was about 11 years old. The Rav in Chicago, the Talmud Chacham, I remember we walked out of shul one Sunday morning, and the Rav said to me, and at the time I didn't know, I didn't know these halachas, and the Rav said to me, I know you're a Kohen, but could you go across the street and buy me a newspaper? It was 7-Eleven across the street. So I was very honored to do it for the Rav, and I didn't understand. He's saying, I know you're a Kohen, but I thought it was just, it's kind of being a formality. Lamaisa, there are poskim that say even a cotton is a suffik d'oraisa. You can't ask a Kohen who's a cotton to do something for you. So a person has to know that when there's a Kohen, we're talking about the halachas like any other halachas. And if there's a Kohen and you ask a Kohen, there are poskim that say even now when it comes to something past the ketchup, past the salt, that's something at the table. Some poskim say that something insignificant is not an issue. Other poskim say it is. I think I was my second year of marriage. My wife asked me to take the garbage. So I don't know why it took me 2 years. My wife asked me to take the garbage. I tell you exactly how the conversation transpired. I remember the exact words of the conversation. I said to my wife, how would it look for me, a Kohen, to take the garbage? And my wife said to me, how would it look for you, a Kohen, to be single? Right? So I took the garbage. And then, believe it or not, I went to ask the Rav. Now, I knew that I'm allowed to take the garbage. I knew I'm allowed to do that for my wife. I could take the garbage. But then I went to ask the posek. I wanted to hear how he would put it. What's going on according to halacha? So he said to me, and I kind of rolled his eyes, another Kaplan question. So he said to me, look, not all of the orange peels and eggshells in the garbage are hers. Some of them are yours also. It's not like you're doing it for her. She never made a kinyan on it. But the Mai says that's obviously not a problem. But the poskim do talk about parents asking their children, parents who are Kohanim asking their children. I'll get to you 1 second. The Bir Halacha talks about what about a Kohen asking another Kohen? Can a Kohen ask a Kohen to do this? So the Bir Halacha says that it's pashas, it's mutter, but it's a good thing to be machmer. Question, go ahead.
If a Kohen offers to do something to guest your home and he offers on his own, is there an Indian to turn him down and say no, it's okay to have someone else?
That I haven't seen anyone say it's an Indian to turn him down. If a Kohen offers to do something on his own. So that's a good question. I haven't seen any poskim that say that there's an Indian turn him down. The one thing you're not allowed to do, but according to all poskim, a Kohen himself is not allowed to do a dover bozui. A Kohen is not allowed to do something that's degrading unless he gets a benefit out of it. So the benefit would be if he's doing a job. Let's say a Kohen is working in some sort of job that involves something unclean or whatever it is. There, if it's for his own benefit, he's allowed to do it. But even for an Adam Chashuv, a Kohen's not allowed to do a Dover Bozui. He can do things for an Adam Chashuv because he gets hana from doing it for an Adam Chashuv, yes. And even there, everywhere you go over here, there are poskim. There's a range among in the poskim about what can be done. Now, my next door neighbor in my building, there are 4 families. The Rav of the Kehila, myself, another neighbor who's a Kohen, and the 4th neighbor. So I remember one day seeing the 4th neighbor, she had her bag of garbage outside her house. So I was on the way to the garbage anyway, and she doesn't have a husband, and I was on the way out to the garbage, so I was, I think the first time I took the garbage, and then I went and asked the Rav, am I allowed to take somebody else's garbage? And he said to me, no. Which meant she was out of luck because you got the Rav who's not allowed to take it, and 2 Kohanim weren't allowed to take it, right? So and again, we're talking about something which I'd be willing. I do it willingly, But under the circumstances, I was allowed to. Yeah.
According to that story, I had a brother-in-law in Yom Tov, my house, who's a Kohen, and he said, I'll take out the garbage. So in theory, I should have told him no.
In theory, I mean,
I don't know if he knew the halacha.
If he didn't know the halacha, look, if he's doing it for himself, then it's a question if he gets that. No, it's not so good. But theoretically, he shouldn't be doing it. If it's not his own, theoretically, he should not be doing
There might
it.
be a place to turn him down, possibly. You're saying.
What's that?
There might be a makom to say.
A very strong makom. Again, that was Rav Avraham Psak. Other people, other poskim, then you have to ask your local Orthodox rabbi. But there is certainly grounds for it. About that he shouldn't be doing it.
There's no such thing as a Kohen being mochel on his cover?
A Kohen can be mochel on his cover up to a limit. A Kohen can be mochel on his cover. That's right. He can't be mochel when he gets into a davar bazui. And I saw one of the poskim say that he shouldn't be flippant about it. Because then it becomes like, yeah, okay, I'm a Kohen, but big deal. Be omeid on it a little bit that you're a Kohen. So because otherwise we're treating the halacha a bit with too much of a cavalier attitude towards it. It's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch. It's a halacha based on the Kiddashto, and therefore we have to realize that there's Kedushas Kahuna, which something is we take for granted. Okay, one of the other areas where
Can ask your children to clean their room.
No, you can tell your children to clean the room. You can demand they clean the room. Yeah. No, asking children, not a problem. The Kohanim can tell their children, I think. Yeah, that's the post can say clearly because he's got a mitzvah of kibbut. Keep it up. Yes, question.
Would it matter if your neighbor was an almana? Would that make any difference?
She is. And she is in the post. I can't take it. That line is a good question. That line for a Kohen there's a Kedushas Kahuna. You can't do it. Okay.
How long is the go up supposed to stand up?
What's that?
How long is the go up supposed to stand up?
No, it's just outside her door. Somebody could take it. She would have taken it. I was just going to do a favor to take it while on my way out. I'm on my way out anyway. So, that he said I can't do.
Is there a kedima for Kohanim, for example, in giving loans?
Not if a person even by the platter. I know that Reb Chaim Kanievsky, when he gets letters, he answers Kohanim letters first. Reb Chaim Kanievsky he's answered over 100,000 letters over the years. When he gets his letters, he's got a box that he looks based on the names of the letters. If you can more or less pick out who's a Kohen name, that he does give kedima to. Even at the table where there's the platter of food, the Kohen only has kedima if you're not going to lose out. That means if there are 9 pieces of white meat and 1 piece of dark meat, right, and the Kohen, you let him take first, he's going to take the dark meat. That you're not mechuyev to do. It's only when you're going to just get it a few minutes later. But so in a loan, if there's only 1 loan available, I don't think you're mechuyev to give up the loan to the Kohen. I don't think they get split kedima. It could be that's the machriya who to give it to. And like if a Talmid Chacham comes first when they hilchos tzedakah, so it could be that's a machriya. Okay, there is one important thing there. The halacha. Yeah, please.
If you did a service to the Kohen, the Kohen wants us to say, if he asks you, can you please pick something up for me?
I think so. Yes, I think you're mekayim the mitzvah. You're mekayim the mitzvah of the kiddashto the same way that you're mekayim the mitzvah of kibbut av v'aim. If you have to be mechabed your older brother. What does that mean to be mechabed your older brother? I think it means that anytime you're mechabed your older brother, that means that you're mekayim the mitzvah. In addition to the chesed, you're getting the credit for it. So in addition to the chesed, you don't require anything to the mitzvah of kiddashto. Yeah. The one thing halacha l'maisa, and this everybody has to know, when it comes to birkas kohanim, all right, we do in Eretz Yisrael, we duchen every day, and there's a mistake that's made on a regular basis. It says openly in halacha that it should not be done b'merutza. Number 1, it shouldn't be done hurry. Sometimes that sort of thing. Number 1. Number 2, the shliach tzibur everybody should know this. Sometimes the shliach tzibur gets up there, it's like he's saying a secret code. All of a sudden, that guy talks all day long, talks, this talks, that talks, everything. All of a sudden, he gets the birkas kohanim. All of a sudden, say it out loud. If you're shliach tzibur, number 1, out loud. Number 2, the halacha says the words should not cut into each other. That when yivarechecha, you wait to say, if you're in a shliach tzibur, wait to say yivarecha Hashem until the Kohen Gadol finishes. Until the Kohen finishes saying the bracha, saying the word, you don't cut him off. Somebody once said, a Rav once spoke, he said, can you imagine, you go to Reb Chaim Kanievsky, you go to one of the Gedolim for a bracha. He says, listen, I want to give you a bracha that you should have a good parnas, and you cut him off. Can you imagine cutting him off in the middle? Why, he hasn't finished saying what he's saying. If Reb Chaim Kanievsky was giving me a bracha, I would stand there until I'm good and sure that he's finished saying what he has to say. A Kohen is giving you a bracha, not a Kohen giving you a bracha, the Rebbeinu Shalom is giving you a bracha. The Rebbeinu Shalom is also a Baki and Shas and Poskim, right? And the Rebbeinu Shalom is giving you a bracha over that. The Kohanim are just, that the whole idea of holding the hands out, the whole idea of handing your hands out is that the Kohen is a viaduct. That's the idea of giving brachas in general. You give a child a bracha, you put your hands on your head. That means you're a conduit of the bracha, the hashpah that's coming down and spreading out to the people. The Kohen is not the Kohen giving you the bracha, the Rebbeinu Shalom is giving the bracha. So it's a joke, the Kohen is giving the bracha, and it's almost like the Shliach Tzibur is like, come on, hurry up with the bracha already. It's the Rebbeinu Shalom who's giving the bracha. And therefore the halacha says that the Kohen should not run into the Shliach Tzibur, the Tzibur should not run into the Kohen, and the whole cycle, they should not be cutting into each other while they're giving these brachas.
That means that you have to wait till the last, there's 20 Kohanim, you have to wait till the last one finishes.
I think that, good question. I'm not sure if somebody's exaggerated. I don't know if it's exaggerated, but generally it's not that way. Generally, they shouldn't be cutting into each other.
When someone's like deliberately doing a very, very long.
Deliberately doing a long one, you should be spoken to. You should, not then, but afterwards. I know exactly what you mean because they all came to speak to me. So okay, one last point here, which is extremely extremely important, is if somebody is acting as a shadchan, if somebody is going to be a shadchan for kohanim, there are marriage limitations. The Torah says a kohen is not allowed to marry a grusha, almana, grusha, chalol, zona. He's not allowed to marry. Now, nowadays, this is unfortunately a very big challenge because a kohen who did not have a background in a kohen who is a Baal Tshuva, for example, and he has a limitation of his choices in the shidduch pool. So let's say a regular Beis Yaakov girl who's not looking to marry a Baal Tshuva. All right, so we take them out of the equation. A Kohen is looking to marry a woman who's a Baal Tshuva. Very sensitive investigation must go into the shidduch, because if the woman is a grusha, or if the woman has lived with a man who's not a Jew, then she is not allowed to marry a Kohen. And this could become a problem. There was one famous case where Rav Moshe was asked, there was somebody became a Baal Tshuva, and he went to a shir, and in the shir they were talking about the limitations. The Kohen is not allowed to marry a grusha, and he came to the Rav, he said, but I'm a Kohen, I'm a Baal Tshuva, my wife is a grusha, and we have 3 kids. So they went to Rav Moshe investigated, and Rav Moshe paskin that the chazaka of this man being a Kohen is dubious, and therefore he's allowed to stay married to his wife, but he does not have the dinim of a Kohen. I knew a Kohen who was told, he went to Rav Elyashiv, he was told that he had to ask his mother if she was kosher to marry his father before he became a Baal Tshuva, and he had to ask his mother if his mother was allowed to marry his father, otherwise he's a cholol. Now a cholol is not the end of the world, it just means that he is ois Kohen. For all intents and purposes, a cholol is a Kohen who's married somebody who's also to marry. The children are cholol, and they're ois kohanim. They don't have any limitations. They could be matame l'meis. But a person who's setting up a shidduch has to know that before setting up a Kohen, there has to be some sort of sensitive investigation that's made to find out if the girl is kosher for kahuna. Rav Moshe was also asked. There's a very quick. I just finished an amazing ma'isa. I don't know if I mentioned it last year. Rav Moshe had a young lady came to him, and she said to him that her mother. Tell me if I told you this last year. I don't remember if I mentioned this last year. She came to Rav Moshe. She said to Rav Moshe, her mother got married with a chuppah and kiddushin, and they had a civil divorce. 100% chuppah kiddushin, civil divorce, and then she married another man. This girl was born from the second union, and she became a Baal Tshuva. She got engaged to a Shiva Bacher, and her friend said to her before she marries him, she better go speak to Rav Moshe. She wants to know, is she allowed to marry him? So Rav Moshe said, tell me the shaila again. So she repeated the shaila. Her mother got married chuppah kiddushin, had a civil divorce, never had a get, married a second man. She's born from the second union. Rav Moshe said, come back in 24 hours. She came back 24 hours later. He said, mazel tov, everything is good. You can marry him, no problem. Well, scampers off happily. The Talmidim said to him, We heard what you heard. That's a mamzeris lemahadrin min mahadrin. How can you possibly matter that? So Moshe said, you're right, you heard what I heard. But in the last 24 hours, he was a soldier. Her mother was married to an American soldier stationed there. I forgot to mention that. She was married to an American soldier stationed in England. And chuppah kedushin, everything was good. Okay, so everybody said, you're right, you heard what I heard. In the last 24 hours, we contacted the American Pentagon. The Pentagon said, yes, there was the soldier stationed in England. Yes, he married her mother with chuppah and kedushin. Yes, they got divorced. No, there was no get. But simultaneously, he had a wife and 2 daughters in the United States, which that woman clearly would never have married him had she known that he was committing bigamy. And therefore, the original marriage was a mekach tos. There was no marriage. Therefore, she could marry. That was his psak. So that was what the world lost with Rav Moshe. That's what Rav Moshe paskined over here. Okay.